My boss stole my retirement, betrayal, redemption, and the shocking truth. I was just a year away from freedom, picturing lazy days with Joyce, my wife, after nearly 40 years of grinding at Conroy Solutions. Retirement shimmered like a mirage on the horizon, a promise of peace. Then, Greg, my boss of 15 years, a man I considered more than just a colleague, summoned me to his office, and the comfortable world I knew shattered into a million pieces. He was pacing, a nervous habit I'd rarely witnessed, and when he finally stopped, the words he uttered felt like a physical blow. "I've been taking some of your pension," he confessed, avoiding my gaze like a guilty child. My mind blank, sputtering. "Excuse me," I chuckled, praying it was some twisted joke. But his face was a stone-cold mask of seriousness. "I'm not proud of it, Ray," he continued, the words like shards of glass. "It was something I had to do for my family." My heart hammered against my ribs, disbelief clawing at my throat. "Wait a minute," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "You're telling me you've been stealing from my pension?" He merely shrugged, as if confessing to a minor inconvenience. "I only took a portion." "You're not going to starve." "Not going to starve." I was so stunned I could barely breathe. "Greg, that money is my life. I've been counting on it." Joyce and I choked, unable to finish the sentence. "How could you?" he muttered. "Look, I didn't want to do it, but I had no choice," folding his arms and leaning against the desk. "I'll pay you back. It'll just take a little time. It's not like you're retiring tomorrow." So that was it. A casual sorry, a dismissive wave, as if he'd borrowed a pen and forgotten to return it. He looked at me as if I were overreacting. "Come on, we've known each other for years. It's not like I was trying to screw you over." I had bills, unexpected expenses, things just got complicated. My fists clenched, knuckles white. Things got complicated. And instead of talking to me, instead of confiding in me, he just helped himself to my future. "Ray, I didn't think you'd notice, and I thought I could put it back before it made any real difference." Didn't think I'd notice. I don't have some endless retirement fund. That money is everything. "Greg, I worked for decades so that Joyce and I could retire comfortably." He rolled his eyes, a gesture that sent a surge of rage through me. "You're acting like I took it all. You still have plenty left. It's not the end of the world." I felt like I was going to explode. "Grego, much?" I asked, my voice a low growl. He shrugged again, that infuriating, dismissive shrug. "About 40%. 40%. The number echoed in my head, a horrifying calculation of lost dreams. "Breed, you'll make it right. Keep this between us. No need to ruin my career over one mistake." A mistake. This was calculated, cold-blooded. "Greg, don't make it sound like you tripped and fell into my pension." He bristled at that, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was going. "Listen," he said, his voice firm, "you won't get your money any faster if I lose my job, maybe even my family. Do you want that?" He had no idea the devastation he'd already wrought, or maybe he did and simply didn't care. I felt trapped, torn between loyalty and a burning sense of injustice. "Do you think I care about your career after what you did to mine?" I snapped. "I'm sorry, Ray. I know it's messed up, but can we handle this quietly?" "Quietly? No, Greg. I'm done covering for you." I walked out of his office without another word, a cold dread settling in my stomach. That evening, I barely touched my food, just pushing the meatloaf around my plate, lost in the turmoil of the day's revelation. Joyce, my rock, knew something was terribly wrong. "Ray, what's going on?" I leaned back in my chair, the truth a heavy weight on my tongue. "It's Greg. He's been stealing from my pension." Her voice was a mix of disbelief and rage. "Are you serious? How long?" "Ray, that's your retirement he's playing with." I nodded, staring at my plate, unable to meet her eyes. "He says he'll pay it back, but I don't trust him." Joyce took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "So, what are you going to do?" I felt lost, unsure. Part of me wants to just let it go, avoid the mess. "Buddha's been my friend." Joyce shook her head, her voice sharp. "He's not your friend, Ray. A friend wouldn't do this to you." I couldn't sleep that night, the conversation replaying endlessly in my head. The next morning, I went straight to HR. One evening, our son Carl, a recent law school graduate, came over. He sensed the tension immediately. His reaction was immediate and decisive. "Dad, you need to go to the police." I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "Carl, it's complicated. Greg's been my boss and my friend for years, and he says he'll try to pay me back." Carl shook his head, his voice firm. "Dad, he took 40% of your pension. That's not something you just pay back. It has betrayed you, plain and simple. You need to do something." I looked at Joyce, and she nodded in agreement. "If you don't report it, he'll just keep getting away with it." The next morning, I found myself at the police station, filing a report, one of the hardest things I ever done. The trial was a media circus, and as it turned out, I wasn't the only one he'd stolen from. The town buzzed with gossip, and soon Greg's wife, Maureen, was calling us, her voice choked with desperation. "Ray, please, I had no idea he was doing this. I thought everything was fine. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but there was no way I could back down now. Maureen, I'm sorry, but he's ruined so many people's lives, including mine. This is what he deserves. She tried to argue, but I was firm. And then I heard she filed for divorce soon after Greg's sentencing. Greg got 10 years in prison. Joyce and I struggled financially. Even though we recovered some of the pension, it was nowhere near enough to cover the years Greg had stolen. I ended up taking a part-time job just to make ends meet, and every time I punched the time clock, I felt the sting of his betrayal all over again. A year later, I got a letter from Greg. It was handwritten, almost unreadable in parts. Ray, I know you'll never forgive me, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Truly, I didn't think it would end like this, and I know I ruined your retirement. I hope someday you can find a way to forgive me. I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. In the end, Joyce and I decided to move somewhere quiet, a small cottage in Maine. The waves crashed against the rocks, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time. Some wounds heal slowly, I suppose, but at least I could find some peace, knowing that I stood up for myself. Sitting on the porch of that cottage in Maine, watching the waves crash against the rocks, I felt a strange mixture of peace and anger. I had lost more than money. I had lost years of trust, decades of friendship. Life had changed irrevocably. After Greg was sentenced, Joyce and I adjusted. We lived leaner, got by on what we had, and found a way to be content. We both worked small jobs around town when we could, mostly just to keep busy and keep our heads above water. Then, one evening, as we were settling into another quiet night, there was a knock on our door. It was Carl, an envelope in his hand, his face a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Hey Dad, Mom," he said, "you're not going to believe this." He handed me the envelope. "It's from Maureen." My heart skipped a beat at the mention of her name. Maureen, why would she send anything? Carl shrugged. "Well, you know I've kept in touch with her a bit, just to make sure she was okay. She told me something a few weeks ago that I wanted to wait until it was official to tell you." A sinking feeling settled in my gut. "Official? What's going on?" Carl gestured toward the envelope. "Open it, it'll make sense." I ripped the envelope open, squinting at the paperwork. It was a stack of documents tied to a series of hidden accounts Greg had managed to squirrel away over the years. Maureen had apparently uncovered them recently. "Carl," I said, scanning the documents with a furrowed brow, "what is all this?" Carl sighed. Maureen discovered it wasn't just his own cash flow he was hiding, but everything he'd stolen from others over the years, including your pension. I was speechless, my hands trembling as I tried to absorb it all. This was my money, the pension I thought was gone forever. Maureen, somehow, had managed to get it back. Why would she give this to us? I finally asked. Carl shrugged. She felt guilty. She said Greg made a mess of everyone's life, including hers. She knew it wasn't your fault, and she didn't want to keep money that was never theirs in the first place. Joyce put her hand on my shoulder, her face a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Ray, this means it means," I said, a grin spreading across my face. "We might actually get to retire." The next few months were a whirlwind. We managed to file for restitution on the funds. It took a year to untangle everything, navigating the legal system with Carl's help. Eventually, the judge ruled in our favor. It wasn't the full amount Greg had taken, but it was enough to make a difference, enough to finally breathe easy. The day we finally received the first payment, we sat by the window watching the ocean as the sun dipped below the horizon. "I'm proud of you, Ray," Joyce said, clinking her glass against mine. I smiled, a real smile for the first time in years. "I couldn't have done it alone," I said, squeezing her hand. "I would have let it all go if you hadn't kept me strong." She smiled back. "You've always been strong. Sometimes you just need a reminder." We spent the evening talking about our plans, the plans we'd almost given up on, a small road trip along the coast. As we walked back to the cottage, the air was filled with the scent of salt and the sound of crashing waves. Life was good again. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to see him suffer. A few weeks later, another letter arrived from Greg in prison. I hesitated before opening it, feeling a mixture of curiosity and dread. Joyce watched me from across the kitchen, her expression unreadable. The letter was long, winding through a series of half-hearted apologies and pleas for forgiveness. But one line stuck with me. "Ray, I hope you can forgive me someday. I know you're happier now, and I'll never get that kind of peace in here. But if there's one thing I can ask for, it's that you find it in your heart to forgive me, even just a little." I realized I already had. It wasn't a conscious decision, a grand gesture of absolution. It was a gradual release, a letting go of the anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long. Joyce walked over, squeezing my shoulder. "Are you all right?" "Yeah," I said, smiling softly. "I think I am," savoring every sunrise, every shared laugh, every quiet moment with Joyce. I realized that life, despite its hardships, had a way of healing, if you let it. Sometimes, when the ocean was particularly calm, I'd think back on that chapter of my life, and I'd be filled with a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Joyce, for Carl, for Maureen's unexpected act of kindness, and even, strangely, for Greg. For his betrayal, as devastating as it was, had ultimately led me to a place of deeper understanding, a greater appreciation for the simple joys of life. I had reclaimed my life and my future, and that was worth more than any pension ever could be. Years passed, blowing into a tapestry of quiet mornings and peaceful evenings. The memory of Greg and his actions started to feel like a distant echo, a faded photograph in the album of my past. But sometimes, the past would creep up unexpectedly, like a ghost refusing to stay buried. A letter from the prison system notifying me of a parole hearing, or a message from Kyle about another legal form related to Greg's restitution. I dealt with them as they came, with a quiet resolve, a sense that I'd moved on. Then, one morning, as I was sipping my coffee on the porch, admiring the sunrise over the ocean, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed across the screen. I hesitated before picking up, part of me not wanting to reopen old wounds. But another part of me felt I owed it to her. It was Maureen. Her voice was softer, more subdued than I remembered. "Ray," she began, "I hope this isn't too much, but I thought you should know. Greg's not doing well." I took a deep breath, not sure how to feel. The man who stole my future was now facing his own mortality. "What do you mean?" I finally asked. "His health has taken a turn. It's not looking good," she said, her voice trembling. "They're talking about moving him to a hospice facility." There was a long pause before she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "He's asking to see you, Ray." The words hit me like a cold wave, washing over me with a chilling mix of emotions. A part of me wanted to hang up right then, to shut out the past and pretend it never happened. But another part of me, a more thoughtful, perhaps even a more compassionate part, knew that I couldn't. Greg had been my boss, my friend, and then my worst enemy. Seeing him now felt like opening up scars that had only just begun to heal. But perhaps it was also an opportunity to finally put those scars to rest. I finally asked, my voice barely audible, "Why? What does he want?" She sighed. "He says he needs to make things right, or at least as right as he can." Another silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. "Look, I understand if you don't want to go," she said, her voice filled with understanding. "I just thought you'd want to know." When I told Joyce about it that evening, she listened quietly, her arm around me, her eyes filled with a depth of understanding that only she possessed. "What are you thinking?" she asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "It's been years. I thought I'd moved on. Seeing him now, it feels pointless." Joyce nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Maybe it is, but maybe this is your last chance to lay it all to rest. For good." A week later, I found myself at the hospice center, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling the air. The hushed corridors, lined with rooms filled with the sounds of labored breathing and quiet suffering, amplified my nervousness. The air was heavy with the weight of mortality. The beeping of medical equipment served as a constant reminder of the fragility of life. I almost turned around, my resolve wavering with each step I took, but something kept me moving forward, a sense of obligation, perhaps, or a nagging feeling that I needed to face this one last time. When I finally walked into his room, I barely recognized him. The man who had once been so confident, so full of life, was now a frail shadow, his face gaunt and pale. His eyes flickered when he saw me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a sparkle of the old Greg, a flicker of recognition, a hint of regret. "Ray," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. Thank you for coming." I stayed by the door, my arms crossed, my expression unreadable. I wasn't sure what to expect, what he wanted from me. I certainly didn't come to offer him comfort or forgiveness. "I didn't come for you, Greg," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I came to put this behind me, once and for all." He nodded slowly, his eyes closing for a moment. "Fair enough, I deserve that." There was a long silence, the only sound of rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us, the years of friendship, the betrayal, the anger, the pain. I thought about walking out right then, turning my back on him and leaving him to face his fate alone. But something kept me rooted in place, a morbid curiosity, perhaps, or a faint glimmer of hope that something good could come of this. "Why, Greg?" I finally asked, my voice shaking slightly. "Why did you do it? You were my friend. We worked together for years. Was the money really worth it?" He opened his eyes again, their gaze filled with a weariness that seemed to reach to the depths of his soul. He closed his eyes, swallowing hard before he spoke. "Ray, I wish I had a good answer. I told myself I'd put it back, that no one would notice. I kept saying it was just for a little while, but then it kept piling up. I got in over my head. It was a weak attempt at justification, a pitiful explanation for years of deceit and greed. He thought those reasons would sway me to give him mercy. You ruined people's lives, Greg," I said quietly, my voice filled with a profound sadness. "Not just mine. You took advantage of people who trusted you." He nodded slowly, his eyes wet with tears. "I know, believe me, I know, and I'd give anything to take it back." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of regret and remorse heavy in the air. I wanted to feel pity, maybe even forgiveness, but all I felt was sadness, a deep, aching sadness for the man he used to be and the man he become. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Ray," he whispered, his voice cracking, "can you forgive me?" I took a deep breath, thinking of all the years I had spent trying to heal, trying to move on. I thought forgiveness was impossible, that I carried the bitterness and anger with me forever. But standing there, looking at the frail, broken man before me, I realized that forgiveness wasn't about him. It wasn't about excusing his actions or condoning his betrayal. It was about me. It was about freeing myself from the chains of the past, about releasing the negativity that had poisoned my soul for so long. Forgiveness was about giving myself the gift of peace. "Greg," I said, my voice steady, "I don't forgive you for what you did, but I forgive you because I can't carry this with me anymore. I don't want to." He nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of relief and acceptance. "Thank you," he whispered. "That's more than I deserve." I turned and left the room without looking back, leaving the weight of the past behind me. In the months that followed, life found a quiet rhythm again. The memory of Greg's betrayal faded even further into the background, replaced by a sense of peace and contentment. I didn't need the grand retirement I'd once dreamed of. I didn't need the riches or the recognition. I had Joyce, I had my family, and I had my peace of mind. This was more than enough. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the waves, Joyce turned to me, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "You look lighter, Ray," she said, her eyes sparkling with warmth, "like you finally let something go." I smiled back, realizing that she was right. I had finally released the burden of the past, and in doing so, I had found a freedom I never thought possible. "I think I have," I said, taking her hand in mine. We sat there, hand in hand, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant colors, filled with a quiet joy, a deep sense that life, despite all its hardships, had a way of healing, if you let it. I realized that sometimes the hardest journeys bring you to the most peaceful places. Did I handle this situation the right way? Should I have given him more mercy, or did I do right to protect myself and my family by turning him in?